In this chapter, we will be exploring using templates for our site development. Templates can be very helpful in designing your sites, especially in helping you to create pages quickly, keeping your site consistent, and later it can really help in maintaining your site. Templates allow you to lock certain portions of your design down while allowing editable regions to change from page to page. This means that page elements that are consistent across your site only have to be created once, and when updated, will update globally across your entire site. Before we get started building our templates, I want to make a point about this chapter in that it's a little different from the other chapters in the title. It's important that you go through this chapter in order, as we will be building the templates and then incrementally updating them in each successive movie. Doing the movies out of turn will not give you the proper context of how those changes fit into the overall template workflow. Okay, so now that we've had an overview of how templates work, it's time to get in and start thinking about creating our own templates. The first step in using templates for your sites is to take a close look at your page design and identify the elements that remain consistent or only change slightly from page to page. So here I have the template_source.html file open, and this is the file that we're going to use to create our first template. Now, if we think about the design of the Explore California website, we have a few things that are going to remain constant from page to page. We have a few things that will show up on some pages and not others, and then we have a few areas that are going to be unique for every single page. Identifying those types of regions are going to be really helpful for you when you're planning your templates. For example, the logo is going to show up on every single page, and it's always going to link back to the index or home page of the site. A region ID will always show up at the top of the page and will display exactly which area of the site the user is in. Underneath that, there's an optional region where breadcrumbs will be used in subdirectories, but not for main or top level pages. So that needs to be on some pages, but not all of them. If we turn our attention to the navigation and the sidebar, we notice that for the navigation, certain navigation items have submenus. Tours, for example, resources, and explorers. They're not going to show up on every single page. The sub-navigation is only necessary when I'm in one of those specific regions. So there's another part of our design that is going to be needed on some pages, but not all of them. As I go down into the sidebar, each page is going to list our monthly specials, and each page is going to showcase some trivia, but the trivia is going to change for every single page. The footer is going to remain fairly consistent for every single page, so it's never going to change. And then if we turn our attention to the main content region, we can see that we've got some content on the page right now that is specific to the Backpack California page. And although certain pages are going to share some similarities, for example, tour description pages will be very similar in structure, although the content will vary from page to page. But in this main content region here on the right-hand side, that's really going to change in almost every single page. So really, if you can take a high-level overview of your page design like this, it's pretty easy to identify elements that are always going to show up, other elements that are going to be on some pages but not others, and then certain regions that you're really going to need to change from page to page. Once you've performed that kind of assessment, planning your template becomes a lot easier. So what we're going to do now is we've just got this template source page, and this is the page that we're going to base our template off of. The thing that I want to do before I create my template is go ahead and make a lot of these regions generic. That way, if a team member is building a page off of this, they have some type of instruction as to what to do, and they don't have a lot of content that they need to delete or get rid of. So the first thing I'm going to do is go up to the very top of the page, and right here where it says tours, that's really identifying the region of the site that the user is in. So we're just going to replace that with a placeholder region ID. So before I create a template, I go into these sections and create some really generic placeholders that simply identify the content that is going to go there. When I go down to breadcrumbs, I don't need 2 levels of breadcrumbs. I just need 1 to start off with, and then based upon the page that I'm creating off the template, I can add as many breadcrumbs as I need. I'm going to select the Backpack Cal breadcrumb, go down to my tag selector and use it to select the link that's surrounding it, and then delete that. That'll get rid of the text and the link as well, and we'll just have a singular breadcrumb ready to use. I'm going to highlight that breadcrumb, and I'm going to replace it with just that, the word breadcrumb. There we go. And I'm going to take the page-specific link that is there now. I'm just going to replace that with a dummy link. I'm just going to type in the pound symbol. That's a nice way of just putting in a placeholder link. The A tag will remain, but that's not really going to go anywhere. Now, going down the page a little bit, I'm also going to take the headline Backpack Cal, and I'm just going to change that to page heading, because every single page we work with does have a main heading. Now, almost every page in our site is going to follow a very similar form. Typically, there is some type of body copy, and typically there's an accent image here. Now, it would be really tempting to try to keep the accent image, but this is an inline image, meaning it's literally flowed into this text. So changing the text at all, if you highlight it and start typing it, the image itself will go away. So that makes it very, very difficult to copy and paste text from other source documents without actually getting rid of the image. So moving an image onto the page, even though it does require a little bit of manual labor, isn't that much work. So it's okay to go ahead and get rid of the image and then make sure that people know that every time you're building a page, this is the accent image that you need to use for that particular page. So I'm just going to highlight this copy, knowing that when I start typing, the image is going to go away. And I'm just going to type in body content goes here. So very short, very descriptive, and that's just not a lot of content for you to replace when you're building pages based off of your new template. Okay, now I'm going to save the page and turn my attention over here to the navigation. You may have noticed it seems kind of strange to have all of these sub-navigation areas visible. That's certainly not the way that it's going to be within our site. Well, those are going to be optional regions. So when we build a page off of our template, we're going to give ourselves the ability to tell the template which, if any, of those sub-navigation areas we want to be visible. But there's another factor we have to consider here as well. One of the things that we like to do is identify which page we're currently on. For example, if I select the Explorers link, and I'm just going to do this real quick, you don't need to do this with me, and I add the class current to the link, you'll notice that Explorers now displays as the current page. Well, we need to have that ability from our templates too. When we create a new page off of a template, we need to be able to express that to any new page being created from the template so that the proper link will display as being current. So what we've got here is we have all of our sub-navigation areas and our main navigation area shown as well. That's going to allow us to create what we call optional regions when we build our template. And it's also going to allow us to customize these based on the class that's found. Now, I'll explain that in greater detail in just a moment, but for right now, it leaves us a task at hand that we have to do. What we're going to do is we're going to assign a base link class to each one of these images. That way, we have a class that we can replace with current when we create new pages off of it. I know that may sound a little confusing right now, but trust me, when we get into doing editable attributes in just a little bit, this step will make a whole lot of sense. All right, what I want you to do is click inside the link tours, use the tag selector to select the A tag. It should have the class tours on it, and then hit Command or Control T based on which platform you're on. This is going to bring up the quick tag editor. What I'd like you to do is go into the class attribute. Right now it should say class equals tours. Place your cursor right after the S, but in front of the quotation mark, hit a space, and then type in base link, lowercase b, uppercase L. This class is not in our CSS and doesn't mean anything. What it does is it gives us a placeholder class that we can use later on to replace with current if, in fact, it is the current link. So I'm going to hit return, and then we're going to do that for every single one of these links. So that'll take us a little bit of time, but the hard work we're putting in right now is really going to pay off when we're building pages based off this template. So I'm just going to go to every link, click on the A tag, and hit Control or Command T. Right after that, I'm going to go into the class, and right after the initial class, I'm going to type in a space, and then just type in base link. Now we're going to do that for every single link. So just go right on down the page, do that to all of them. Now, you may have at least one. I'm going to have two because I've got this Explorers here. But this Tour Photos one, when you select that one and bring your link up, you'll see that current is already there. Just in that case, highlight current and type in base link. Okay? So there's your homework. I know that's going to take a little bit of time, but just go down, select each one of these guys, hit Command T, go into class, hit space, and type in base link. You'll be surprised at how quickly you sort of get into a rhythm of that. Now, if you're not familiar with applying classes, one of the things I'd like to point out here is that indeed tags and elements can have multiple classes applied to them. And the way that we define that is in the value, we just put spaces between them. So you can have as many classes applied to an element as you would like. That is not a problem. Okay, after you're done doing the links, in the interest of time, I'm just going to skip down and do the trivia section, but it's really important for you to finish out those links. So just go through them in order and add base link as a class to each one of those. Okay, I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom, and I'm going to find this trivia section. Did you know is going to remain the headline for our trivia, but each page is going to have its own unique trivia fact. So what I'm going to do here is replace that text with trivia body. So again, that's how we'll know exactly where that trivia content goes. All right, now I'm going to do a save as, and I want to save this in the 1301 folder, just in the root directory there. And I'm going to call this main_template.htm. Now, that does not make it a template, but what that does give us is a page structure that's clean, neutral, and this is the page that's going to serve as a blueprint for the template that we are about to build. Now, my advice is to take some extra time when you're preparing your templates. Make sure you're thinking through how each page will be structured. It's easier to make adjustments to which areas will be editable as you're creating your templates than it is later in the process. Well, now that we have a page ready to be converted into a template, we're going to explore the process of creating template pages in our next movie. Creating templates is a two-step process. First, you save the file as a template, and then you create its editable regions. When a file is first saved as a template, everything on the page is initially locked down. Without defining editable regions, you wouldn't be able to build any new pages using your template. In this movie, we're going to take the source file that we created in our last movie, save it as a template, and then go in and define all those editable regions that we're going to need for our pages. So I'm going to go over to my Files panel, and I have defined the 1302 folder as my root directory. And I'm going to go in and find the main_template.htm. So here's the page that we structured last time. You can see all the placeholder items we placed in: region ID, breadcrumb, page heading. And notice that as we click in the links, they all have that base link class applied to it. So base link has been applied to all of those. And then finally, remember in our trivia, we have that trivia body section down there. So this page is ready to go, and we're ready to make a template out of it. So what we're going to do here is go to File and choose Save as Template. Now, you don't have to have a page that's fully structured to save as a template. It doesn't really matter. You can take a fully finished page and save it as a template, or you can start from scratch, whichever workflow is going to be faster for the type of site that you're creating. So I'm going to choose Save as Template. Now, you're going to see something a little different here. We don't get to browse to a directory. We just get this dialog box that comes up and says Save as Template. It asks us which site we want to save it to, and in this case, Explore California. It also shows us that currently we don't have any templates in our site. So we can go ahead and save this page as anything we want, but there's a reason that we named it main_template. That is the name that I want for this template, so I'm just going to leave that name as it is. Now, it's always helpful to type in a description for your template, especially if you're going to have multiple templates. So I'm just going to call this one Top Level Explore California Template. So a brief description that describes the type of pages that should be created using that template is a good idea. I'm going to go ahead and hit Save. It's going to ask you if you want to update links. Definitely say yes. And now let's take a look at why. If you look over at your Files panel, we have a folder over there that we didn't have before. This templates folder was just created, and if we look inside of it, we can see the template that we just created, main_template.dwt. Dreamweaver templates use the .dwt extension. Now, this templates directory is a very important directory. You don't want to move this around, change it, delete it, anything like that. Dreamweaver is going to reference the files in this directory for all the pages that you build off the templates. So it's really important that this remains on the root and that you don't modify it in any way. Now, when you go to upload your pages, you do not need to upload this to your site in order for it to work. Templates really only apply to the local development environment and aren't required by the remote server in order to work properly. Okay, so now that we have our template, the next thing we need to do is go through and add some editable regions. If we just saved our template right now and closed it and tried to build pages off of it, we could build pages, but we wouldn't be able to change anything because everything would automatically be locked down. Creating an editable region is really just as simple as highlighting the regions that you want to be able to change in your template pages and making an editable region out of them. Now, there are a couple of things that you have to take into consideration when you're creating a new editable region. Let's create our first one, and we'll talk about some of those. Go ahead and highlight the text Region ID. That's going to change on every single page, so we need to make an editable region out of that. So with that highlighted, I'm going to go up to my menu and go to Insert, Template Objects, Editable Region. Note the keyboard shortcut, Control-Alt-V or Command-Option-V on the Mac. If you're going to be doing a lot of template creation, that's a good keyboard shortcut to know. So Insert, Template Objects, Editable Region. And we're going to be prompted to go ahead and name this. All editable regions have to have a unique name, so we're going to call this one Region ID. You want to make sure that follows your standard naming convention, single word. You can use underscores or camel case naming or whatever your personal preference is. I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and there's our first editable region. Now notice that the editable region is surrounded in sort of this blue outline and kind of has a blue tab. Now you can change the color coding on those if you'd like. Locked regions have one color and editable regions have another, but if you're going to change them, and you can do that through the preferences, if you're in a team, make sure everybody's using the same color because you don't want to confuse people if you're using one color for editable regions and another for locked. Okay, so the editable region we just created is pretty unique. And what we've done is we've created an editable region within a tag. So our editable region now exists only within this H1 tag. You can see there's a little tag called template editable. And if we were to look at that in code view or split screen view, you can see that Dreamweaver uses these comment tags to identify template structure. So if you ever look at the code, you can see where editable regions begin and where they end. Well, this editable region is inside the heading. That means that whoever creates pages based off this template won't be able to modify the heading at all, only the contents of the heading. That's a really big distinction. Do you want to give people the ability to change an entire region? Or do you want to give them just the ability to change the text within a specific heading or paragraph? You've got the ability to narrow that focus, or you have the ability to create a really large area like we're about to do next. So next, we want the remainder of our main content area to be an editable region. Now, our breadcrumbs will be inside an editable region, but they're also going to be part of something called an optional region. So we're going to be creating them just a little bit later as we tackle those. Okay, so I want you to place your cursor just below the breadcrumbs. And when you do that, you'll probably click and select this div tag called main article. Once you have that div tag selected, an easier way to select it maybe would be to click inside of it and then choose the main article. You want to switch over to code view. You want to make sure in code view that you have lines 48 through 51 highlighted. You want the entire div tag highlighted. The reason that we're doing this is we want the entire div tag to be contained within an editable region. This way, you could change that div tag, you could add tags underneath it, and you wouldn't be restricted to only changing the contents of the div tag. So that's very important. I'm going to switch back to design view. I'm going to go up to insert, template objects, editable region, and we're going to name this one main content. So now we have an area where our body copy and our page headlines can be entered into. And also, since we have the entire div tag as part of that editable region, we could add additional div tags afterwards if the page structure demanded that. Okay, let's scroll down, and we're going to add our sidebar as an editable region. And we're going to do that in a very similar fashion. Just go in and click anywhere inside the sidebar, and then select the sidebar itself using the tag selector right there. Now, for this one, we want all of our content within the sidebar to be editable, but we don't want the div tag itself to be inside an editable region. So sometimes the best way to do that is to go into code view. So I'm going to switch to code view, and there I can see the beginning of the sidebar, and I can see the end of the sidebar. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start selecting at line 55, and I'm going to scroll all the way down to line 70. So make sure you have the div specials highlighted and the closing div on line 70 highlighted, but the ending div tag for the sidebar, which is on 71, and the beginning div tag for the sidebar, which is on 54, you don't want those highlighted because we only want our editable region to be inside the sidebar div tag, not surrounding it. So again, I'm going to go back out to my design view. I'm going to go up to insert, template objects, editable region, and we're just going to call this one sidebar. Now, it may seem like we were having to be extremely precise there, and well, we were. When you create editable regions, you really need to think about the structure of the page and what portion of that region needs to be editable. Is it just a headline that needs to be editable? Is it an entire region? Or is it the contents of a div tag? When you go to make your editable region, you always want to double check to make sure that you have the proper area highlighted. Sometimes you might have too large of an area highlighted and sometimes too small of an area highlighted, and the best way to verify that is just to go into code view, find out precisely which tags you have selected and what portion of your page is going to be within that editable region. Taking the extra time to do that as you're creating your templates is very important because it's going to save you a tremendous amount of time a little bit later on. So now we have 3 initial editable regions. We have the region ID, the main content, and the sidebar. Go ahead and save your template, and Dreamweaver is going to give you a little message. Now, this really isn't an error message. This is more of just letting you know. Notice that it says you placed the editable region region ID inside a block tag. That's the heading that we were talking about. Users of this template will not be able to create new blocks in this region, meaning you won't be able to add paragraphs or new headings up there. Move this region outside the block tag if you want users to be able to do this. So in this instance, we meant to do that, and we want that capability, but it's fantastic that Dreamweaver shows us this message, because if that is not what we had intended, or maybe we selected too small of a region, Dreamweaver is going to give us that feedback so that we know, oh, I didn't mean to do that. I need to modify that editable region. As it is, that's exactly what we wanted to do, so we're going to go ahead and click OK. Now, every time we save this template, we're going to be faced with that particular message. So if it becomes annoying to you after a while, you could turn that off. I like leaving it on because it just gives me that confirmation that, yes, indeed, I did select that area, and that is what I meant to do. Or if I didn't mean to do that, it's always nice to have Dreamweaver reminding me of the fact that editable region might need to be changed. So now I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Now we're almost done with creating our template, but if we take a moment to think about how we're going to build our pages, there are still two items that we need to be concerned with. Our navigation needs to change to show the current page and either to hide or show the sub-navigation based on which section of the site we're in. We also need to either hide or display the breadcrumb navigation based upon the page that we're building. So first, we'll create a means of defining what current page we're on and what type of page we're building through the use of editable attributes. Then we'll move on to controlling the visibility of content through the use of optional regions. There are going to be times that as you plan your templates, you may have elements on the page that, although they have certain attributes which change from page to page, the entire element itself stays the same. This could be the source of an image or the destination of a link, things like that. Well, in these cases, instead of making the whole element an editable region, you can simply make the attribute itself editable. Take our template. We need to be able to control our navigation and breadcrumbs through the template itself. To indicate the current page in our navigation, we'll assign the class current to the link. To adjust the page layout in the event of a page needing breadcrumbs, we assign the class hasCrumbs to the body tag. By simply making those attributes editable, we can change the entire complexion of the page through simply assigning those classes. We're not limited to class attributes either. Link sources, image alt tags, image sources, element IDs, really any attribute can be identified as an editable attribute within your templates. So I've had the main _template.dwt that we were working on in the last exercise open, and I have found this in the 1303 templates folder. So I'm going to start by assigning some editable attributes, and probably the first place to start would be the body tag. Now you'll notice if I look down at my tag selector, the body tag has a class called hasCrumbs. And I'm going to switch over to code view and show you that a little bit more clearly. So our body tag has a class called hasCrumbs. Now what does that do for us? Well, in the event that our page has breadcrumbs, we don't need as much spacing between the breadcrumb and the page heading. When a page has no breadcrumbs, we need to make sure that that space remains empty so that our page headings and the content doesn't move up the page whenever breadcrumbs are not found. So essentially, hasCrumbs simply modifies the space between the heading and the element above it. That way, we ensure consistent spacing whether a page has breadcrumbs or not. So it's really important when we create new pages off this template that we're able to differentiate between pages that have crumbs and pages that don't. By making this hasCrumbs class editable, when we create a new page, we can simply tell Dreamweaver, make the class either this or this, and the layout will adjust. So to make an editable attribute, you simply select the element that contains the attribute in question. In this case, I'm going to go down to my tag selector and again click on that body tag. So just click on that once and make sure you have that selected. Next, I'm going to go up to my menu. Now, when we created Editable Regions, they were found in the Insert menu, but Editable Attributes are actually found under the Modify menu. I don't know why. Just go up to your menu, select Modify, go down to Templates, and you want to choose Make Attribute Editable. Perhaps that's it. We're modifying this particular tag. So as soon as you do that, you'll notice that it's saying choose which attribute of the body tag should be editable. That's a nice indicator of what element you have selected, and if you see something there that you didn't expect, if it said a div tag or a link tag, then we've selected the wrong one and you should hit cancel and try it again. So let's make sure that says the body tag. And the attribute that we're going to make editable is class. Although, if you notice, you grab the pull-down menu, if we had other attributes on the body tag, such as an ID or any of the other attributes that the body tag could have, they would all be listed here. Only the ones that you have set are going to be listed. So I'm going to make sure it says class. Then I'm going to choose Make Attribute Editable. So I can give this a label, and you might be tempted to just go ahead and leave it as class. But later on, when we're creating pages off of this, we're going to go up and modify our template properties, and we're going to get a full listing of these. And if we have 15 classes listed, we won't know what they are. So we're just going to call this one Body Class, all one word. That way we know exactly which one we're modifying. Now, one of the coolest things about Editable Attributes is the Type pull-down menu. Notice that we can choose between text, URLs, color, true, false, or Boolean value, and number. The thing that I love about this is that, let's say you're taking an image and you're making the source of that image editable. If you choose URL, when you go in to modify the image properties, Dreamweaver will give you a little browse icon and you can browse for an image. If you say color, it's going to give you your swatch panel as you assign a value to it. So that's really, really cool. By saying text, you're just saying, let me type in a textual value. And for classes, that's all we really need. Now, I'm just going to leave the default as has crumbs, but I could really put anything I wanted here. So if the overwhelming majority of my site was not going to have crumbs, I could probably just change this to say no crumbs. And then when prompted when creating the page, I could simply type in and change it to has crumbs. But as it is, I'll just leave the default as has crumbs. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And there is our first editable attribute. Now, if you look down at the body tag right now, you're going to see some pretty confusing code. Well, that's what we call a template expression. And essentially, in the code, what Dreamweaver has done is it's created a parameter. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to switch over to Code View. And I can see right here on line 10, up in the head of my document, I now have a comment tag that is essentially Dreamweaver establishing a template parameter. Its name is body class, its type is text, and its value is has crumbs. If you wanted to, and you understood the syntax of that, you could just create these all on your own. In the body class itself, we have what is known as a template expression. This template expression evaluates, and notice that it's looking for the value of body class, so it's going to go up here and find that value and plug it in to that particular spot. So those can be hand-coded if you want, although I think they're a lot easier to do through the interface. Okay, let's go ahead and save our template. And now we need to move on to the big section, which is our links. Earlier, when we created our template, we clicked inside each one of these links, and we added this base link class. When we create a page, we're going to have the option of replacing base link with current. Current would indicate that this is the current page, and our CSS would modify our link so that it displayed properly. As it is, base link has really no styling attached to it at all, so leaving it there means nothing's going to change. That's an important step. Even though that base link is sort of a dummy class and doesn't really do anything for us, it allows us to have a value that we can replace. So you always want that, because if you don't already have something in there, so you at least have to have a default value in there to replace. Okay, so now we have to go through each one of these and create an editable attribute. Again, this is a little bit of work on the front end, but it's really going to pay off when we start creating our pages based on these. So I'm going to click inside Tours, and then using the tag selector, I'm going to click on the link A Tours Base Link. Once again, I'm going to go to Modify, Templates, Make Attribute Editable. So here you can see we have more choices. Our link also includes an href attribute and a title attribute. Well, we want to make the class attribute editable, so I'm going to go ahead and select that. Again, I'm going to click the checkbox Make Attribute Editable, and remember, we have to come up with a unique name for that we'll recognize later on when we're creating pages based off of this. I'm just going to call this one Tours Link. Its type is going to be text, and I'm going to leave the default alone. I'm not going to touch that or modify that in any way. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Now, it's going to appear that deleted the link. It didn't. What it did is it replaced the current class contents with a template expression. Our CSS was using that to determine which graphic to display, so in essence, it's not showing a graphic. That's okay, because when we create a new page based off the template, that template expression will be replaced by the actual classes, so we'll be fine. All right, now all that's left for us to do is to go through each link and in turn create editable attributes. So click inside All Tours, and once again, go down to the tag selector and click on the A tag for that particular link. And we're going to go up to Modify, Templates, Make Attribute Editable. Once again, we're going to do the class. We're going to make that editable. And we're just going to come up with a consistent naming convention here. I'm going to type in Tours Sub to indicate it's part of the subnav, all, because those are all tours. So Tours Sub All, one word. I'm going to leave it text, and I'll leave the default alone. As a matter of fact, we won't change that for any of the links that we're going to be working with. Now, Dreamweaver has a habit of jumping back up to the very top of the page when it finishes with this. It almost makes it easier to go all the way down to the bottom of your navigation and start from the bottom and work your way down. But just keep in mind which one you did last. So I'll do Tours by Activity next. Again, I'm going to click my tag selector and choose the link, Modify, Templates, Make Attribute Editable. We'll make the class attribute editable, and this one is going to be Tours Sub Activity. Next will be Region, so go ahead and select that one the same way that we've selected all the other ones. You want to go to Modify Template, Make Attribute Editable. We're going to do Class, and this one is going to be Tours Sub Region. Select the Tour Finder one. Modify Template, Make Attribute Editable. Class, make it editable, and this one is going to be Tours Sub Finder. Click on Mission, and again I'm going to select the A tag, Modify, Templates, Make Attribute Editable, Class, and we're just going to call this one Mission Link. Again, I'm going to leave the defaults alone and click OK. And again, if we do it right, it'll disappear. Select the contact link, Modify Template, Make Attribute Editable. You can see if you're going to do a whole lot of this in your workflow, you may want to go ahead and map out a keyboard shortcut to this. That could certainly help. This one will be labeled Contact Link. And again, verify each time out that you're making the class attribute editable, not href or the title attribute. Click OK, and just keep going. So next we'll do Resources, Templates, Make Attribute Editable, Class, and we're going to call this one Resource Link. And we just have to go through them one at a time. Unfortunately, there's no shortcuts for this. And you probably won't have this many attributes each time out. So for this one, we're going to call this one Resource Sub FAQ. Again, leave the default alone. And we're just going to keep going. So with each link, just go and select it. And make sure you're modifying the class. This one will be Resource Sub Terms. Modify, Templates, Make Attribute Editable, Class, Resource Sub, I'll just say Add for additional. As long as you know what that name is going to reference later on, then you can name it anything you want. My advice, however, is sometimes when you're doing something like this, you'll say to yourself, oh, I'll remember what that is, but you really want to be descriptive because a month from now, really? Maybe, maybe not. So this one, we'll do Resource Sub Privacy. And we are indeed getting there. We're making progress. Modify Templates, Make Attribute Editable, again, Class. And we're going to make this one Explore Link. And then all that's left to do is the sub-navigation here. So Templates, Make Attribute Editable. We're going to do Explore, Sub, Join. Notice again, we're not modifying those defaults at all. This is why we went in and placed the base link in there to begin with so that we didn't have to do it at this stage. Make Attribute Editable, Class. That one is going to be Explore, Sub, Blog. And then two more. Thanks for hanging in there with me. And this one is Explore Sub Photos. And then finally, we'll do our last one. And that's going to be Explore Sub Video. Okay. Save your file, and now we have our editable regions. Now, I know that took a while to do, but it really showcases that when you make templates, sometimes there's going to be a little bit of drudgery involved. The good news is, though, this work is designed to save us a ton of work on the back end. So by going ahead and putting in the extra work as you're building your templates, You're going to make your life easier as you develop your site and certainly as you maintain your site later on. So we have 2 editable regions for the main content of the page. Our navigation is customizable based on which section of the site we're working on. And our body tag has a class attribute that can be changed to modify the layout for whether we have crumbs on our page or no breadcrumbs. We still have one thing to tackle before we start building pages off of this template. Our sub-navigation and breadcrumbs won't be needed on all of our pages. As such, we're going to make them optional regions so that we only add them to the pages as needed, and we're going to tackle that in our next movie. Our template is almost ready to use, but we need to account for the fact that not every page is going to need the Tours, Resource, and Explorers sub-navigation, and the breadcrumbs are also not going to be needed for top-level pages. As such, we need to place those elements inside what we call optional regions. Optional regions are just that. When you create a brand new page based on the template, you get to decide whether that content will be added to the page or not. They are a great way to create amazingly flexible templates. So we have our main underscore template open, and I've opened this from the 13 underscore 04 templates folder. So the first thing we're going to do is create our optional regions out of our navigation. I'm going to scroll down into my sidebar and navigation area over here, and I'm just going to tackle these guys one at a time. Now, it's really helpful if you have some existing structure that you can use to select the region that's going to be used as the optional region. And in this case, it's going to be really easy for us. I can click anywhere inside the sub-navigation, and I want to use my tag inspector to just sort of go up through the tags, starting on the right-hand side, until I find this. I'm looking for an unordered list, a UL tag, with the class sub-nav applied to it. When I click that, notice that I'm selecting all of those sub-navigation links. So any of our sub-navigations, the Tours, Explorers, and Resources sub-navigations, are all inside of an unordered list with the class sub-nav. So it makes it easier to identify, find, select, and now encase that within an optional region. So with that selected, again, the easiest way to do that is to use the tag selector. I want to go up to Insert, Template Objects, Optional Region. So the first thing it's going to ask me is what I want to name this optional region. And this one, I'm just going to call it Tours Sub Nav. Again, all one word, fairly descriptive. And notice that we have the option of either showing that area by default or not. What that means is when we create a new page off this template, should that be on the page, or do we need to explicitly tell Dreamweaver that we want that on the page? I'm actually going to turn Show by Default off. I don't want that to show. Only when we're building pages in the Tours section will we need this menu. So I'm going to turn it off by default, and then when we get into building pages on the Tours section, I can enable it anytime I want. Now there is an advanced tab here where you get to put in template expressions. Now these expressions might allow you to basically show them if other conditions on the page are shown as well. You can kind of daisy chain some of these optional regions together to create incredibly complex pages. For what we're doing in our template, however, the basic tab is all we need. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Now notice that this is inside sort of a light blue region, and it says if. So this is what we call a conditional region, meaning it's only going to be visible if the conditions for its visibility are met. I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to find the Resources subnav, which is right here, Tour Facts, Terms and Conditions. And once again, I'm going to use the tag selector to find that UL with the class of subnav, and I'll click to select it. So remember, each of those are in exactly the same type of element, making them very easy to select and to convert. Next, I'm going to go up to Insert, Template Objects, Optional Region, and I'm going to call this one Resource Subnav. And just as we did with our tours, I'm going to make that invisible by default, and when we want to see it, we'll have to explicitly state that we need it. I'll click OK, and repeat the same procedure with the Explorer's subnavigation. So click inside of it, click the unordered list, then go up to Insert, Template Objects, Optional Region, and this one is going to be Explorer Sub Nav. Again, deselect the Show by Default, click OK. All right, we're almost done. The last optional region we have on our page is our breadcrumb. And if I click inside that breadcrumb, the structure of it is pretty easy for me to see. It's within a paragraph, which is also within main content. Well, remember, main content has 2 editable regions already in it, so the paragraph is really the only thing we need to show or hide based on whether we have breadcrumbs or not. So I'm going to select the paragraph tag by clicking on the P tag right here. So use your tag selector to make sure you get the tag and the contents of the tag. And again, I'm going to go up to Insert, the Template Objects, Optional Region. Now I'm just going to call this one Breadcrumb, and I'm going to turn Show by Default off. Now when I click OK, it seems like our work here is done, but it's really not. Breadcrumb needs to be editable. Currently it is not within an editable region. Our region ID is, and our main content is, but Breadcrumb is not. So don't assume that optional regions are editable, because they're not. Optional regions are going to show or hide regions on the page, but they're not going to give you the capability of editing the interior contents. So if you need that to be editable, then you need to go ahead and encase that within an editable region, and we're going to do that now. Now I could highlight the text Breadcrumb and make an editable region out of that, but there's no guarantee that I'm going to get all of it or even an individual link. So I'm going to do exactly what I did when I created the optional region. I'm going to use the tag selector to select the paragraph tag and then go up to Insert, Template Objects, Editable Region. I'm just going to call this editable region Crumb Links and click OK. Now you can do that in any order that you like. You could place the editable region there first and then place the optional region around it, or you could do it in the way we did it this time, the optional region with the editable region around it as well. It's never a bad idea to check code view and make sure that it's doing what you want it to do. Notice, for example, that we have our conditional statement here, and now it surrounds the editable region as well, and that's perfect. We want our editable region to be inside the optional region, and that is exactly what is going on here. Now we have our editable regions, optional regions, and editable attributes. So even though we have a fairly simple page layout, we have a fairly robust and complex template. Our template is lean, it's flexible, and it's going to allow us to create almost every page in our site. Well, that means we're ready to create some new pages with our template, and we're going to tackle that next. Our template is finished, and we are now ready to start the process of creating pages based off of it. Depending upon which stage of your site design you begin creating your templates, you could be starting from scratch, or you could already have existing pages in your site that you want to fit into your template structure. First, we'll examine the process of creating new pages from our templates before we take a look at applying templates to already existing pages. So here I am in the 1305 folder, and you'll notice I don't have any pages open. When I need to create a new page based off of a template, I have a couple of options in Dreamweaver, but I want to show you one of the most powerful ones. I'm going to go to File and choose New. Now notice the New Document dialog box comes up, and one of my options over here on the left-hand side is a new page from template. I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and I get to see any of the templates that are currently inside my Explore California site. Notice that I have only one at this point, main_template, and when I select that, I get a neat little thumbnail right over here. That's why I like this method so much. If you have multiple templates, you get to see a preview of which one you're choosing, plus you get to read the description for it. So this is something where you have a lot of options, and it's a very visual process, so you can tell exactly which template you're going to be using. There's another option that I want to point out here that is an incredibly important one. Notice we have a little checkbox right here, and it says Update Page when template changes. If you want to make sure that updating your template is also updating all the pages based off of it, you need to ensure that that is checked. If that's not selected, you're basically just creating a standalone page and using the template as a means of jump starting that page. You won't have that parent-to-child relationship between the template and the page you're building. And for the purpose of site maintenance, that can be really important. So I'm going to go ahead and choose Create. And now I have a brand new page based off of my template. Now I know we're not working on our template anymore because we have this little Untitled 12 up here. And also I noticed that I have this sort of cream colored outline all the way around my page. Mousing around page elements either shows a little no you can't symbol for areas that are locked, or when I get over an editable region, I can enable those and change them. Now, these are our highlight colors. This sort of cream colored means locked, and this blue color right here means editable. If you want to change those, again, you can, and really quickly, I'll show you where you can find those. I'm going to go up to my preferences. So that's Edit Preferences on the PC. It's Dreamweaver Preferences on the Mac. And you want to go to the highlighting category. When you go to the highlighting category, notice that you have highlighting colors for locked regions, editable regions, nested editable, so there are all sorts of different color combinations up here. Now, personally, I like using red for locked regions because, that just means stop. But you can keep the defaults if you'd like. And when I click OK, notice that now the entire page has that sort of locked area around it. Okay, now let's start adding some unique content for our new page. I'm going to change region ID to tours. We're obviously creating a page within the tours section. As a matter of fact, it's not a bad idea to go ahead and save this. So I'm going to go up to File and choose Save. And inside the 1305 folder, I'm going to save this right in the root directory to tours.htm. So now we have our tours page, and we can begin placing content on the page itself. Now, if we look over in the Assets folder, we're going to find a page called tour_content.htm. We're just going to make this process a little quicker by opening this page up and then copying and pasting some content. Now, the first thing I want to do is highlight my body copy. This is right there. And you can either cut or copy this, depending upon how you want to do it. I'm just going to copy it. That way, if I make a mistake, I can come back and change it later. And then I'm just going to highlight the body copy and choose Paste. Now, the page heading, I'm going to highlight that, and I'm going to type in something for everyone. And then if I go back to the tour content, if I click inside this area, Backpack Cal, I notice that there's a div tag with an ID of tour descriptions all the way over to the left-hand side. I'm going to click that, and again go up to Edit and choose Copy. Now when I go back to Tours, we're going to take advantage of something that we did when we created our editable regions. Remember, for our main content editable region, the entire div main article is part of that. That means that I can select this div tag now, hit my right arrow key, and that places me outside of the main article div tag, but still inside the editable region. So when I go up to Edit and choose Paste, now that div tag has been placed just below the main article, and those two div tags are now stacked right on top of each other. That's extremely handy for the structure of our site, and it's one of the reasons that we took such care in creating that editable region for our main content. So now there are all of our tour descriptions, and they look great. Wonderful. One last thing to grab from the tour content region. I'm going to scroll all the way down, and you can see at the bottom, there we have our trivia. So I'm going to highlight that paragraph, copy it. So Command or Control C, go back to Tours, scroll down and find your trivia body, and then paste it. And then I'm going to save the page again. Excellent. Our Tours page is almost finished, and you can see how quick that was. Now, you're probably thinking, well, yeah, but we were copying and pasting. But more than likely, you're going to be getting content from outside sources, whether it's copywriters or clients or other team members, and you're probably going to be getting them in text files, Word documents, or other HTML pages. So copying and pasting into template pages is actually a very common workflow. Okay, I can go close the tour content now, and as I mentioned, we're almost done with tours, but we're not quite done with it. Remember our optional regions? Remember our editable attributes? So we need breadcrumbs to show up because tours has a whole subsection of tours, and we need to know where we are within that structure. And we also would love for the tours submenu to show up since we're in the tours page. We also need to indicate that the tours page is the current page, and we need to indicate to our body tag that we do have breadcrumbs. So that's a lot of changes to make. How do we make all those changes? There's nothing on the page right now that says we want this to display or that to display or assign this attribute. Okay, so anytime you have optional regions or editable attributes, you can access those through something called template properties. So I'm going to go up to Modify and choose Template Properties. Here we get a full listing of all of our editable attributes and optional regions. So the first thing I'm going to do is set my body class. So I'm going to highlight body class, and I'm going to make sure it says has crumbs. It does, so we're in good shape there. Next, I need my breadcrumbs to display. So I'm going to highlight breadcrumb. I'm going to tell it to show. Next, I'm going to go all the way down and find my tours link. Now remember, tours is our current page. So I want to select that, and then I want to replace the word base link with current, all lowercase. Now be sure not to replace tours, and likewise make sure you still have that space between the two of them. It should read tours space current. Finally, I'm going to go down and find my tours subnav, which is right there. Notice that it says false currently. I'm going to tell it to show tours subnav. As soon as I do that, my page changes. If I scroll up, I can see the breadcrumb. The tours is now displaying as the current page based on the CSS, and the sub-navigation shows up as well. So you can see all that hard work we did earlier really paid off by allowing us to build an incredibly flexible page. We're almost done. We just need to go up and modify our breadcrumb. So I'm going to highlight the breadcrumb, and I'm going to replace that with all tours. I'll highlight the link, and I'm going to change the link to tours.htm. Yes, it is the current page that we're on, but later on as we build those subpages, those breadcrumbs will get longer and longer, and we'll be glad that we have that link on the page. So now I'm going to go ahead and save the page. So there we go. Our first page built from our template is finished. We could now use our template to rapidly build the rest of our site. Adjusting the template properties allows us to change current links and the page layout based on the breadcrumbs. Using our template, we could build out page after page after page for our site in probably about half the time that it would normally take us. Now, this is a good time to point out that you should not underestimate the importance of CSS to the templating process either. By having our CSS already written, we speed up the development time even more by simply adding the structure to the page. Our CSS and our templates take care of the rest. Occasionally, you might have an older page or a site that you want to move into your new templated format. Instead of having to copy and paste everything into a new page, you can apply a template to an existing page. As you'll see, this technique does have its drawbacks. So most of the time, you'll need to make a determination as to which approach will be quicker, either applying the template or copying and pasting the content into a new page based from the template. As you'll see, that decision is largely made based upon the complexity of the page that you're working with. So here I have the mission.htm page open from the 1306 directory, and as you can see, this is fairly simple. There's really not a lot going on here. We have some content, some headings, some paragraphs, an image, and they're all inside of a div tag that's sort of holding all that content together. Now, this is clearly not a complex page, and it fits perfectly within the workflow of applying a complex template to a simple page. It's when your pages get more complex that applying the template to it gets a little bit more difficult. And as we go through this exercise, I think you'll see what we're talking about. So we want to go ahead and apply our Explore California main template to this page. Well, one of the easiest ways to do that is to use the Assets panel. So right there beside the Files panel, I'm going to click on the Assets panel and bring that up. Now in your Asset panel categories, you want to click right here on the Template category. It's the second to last icon from the bottom. It kind of looks like that page with some blue text on it. Okay, inside of our templates, we really only see one, Main Template. One of the options of our Assets panel when we highlight Main Template is Apply. Highlighting a template and clicking Apply will go ahead and apply that template to whatever open page you're currently focused on. So obviously that's a button that needs to be treated with a little bit of care. Well, there's another way to apply templates to pages that you might find a little bit easier, or at least certainly more fun. You can grab the main template right here in the Assets panel and literally just drag that onto your page and let go. Now Dreamweaver will go ahead and apply the template to that page. Well, anytime you apply a template to a page, you're going to see this dialog box. Essentially, Dreamweaver wants to know, okay, everything that's on this page, where do you want it to go within your new template? Now, since this is a fairly simple document, we're essentially given one choice. Everything inside the document body, where would you like me to place that? Now, we don't have any links to CSS files. We don't have any external JavaScript files that we're bringing in. We don't have any keywords or meta tagging. And so because of that, we don't actually see a listing for the head of our document. But if we had those things in this page, Dreamweaver would also want to know if we wanted to bring that material into our new templated page as well. Okay, so how do we tell Dreamweaver where to place the contents of the page? Well, simply highlight Document Body right here, and then using your pull-down menu, you tell Dreamweaver where you want to place this content. Now, in this case, this content is going to go into the main content region. Now, to be honest with you, this is one of the biggest drawbacks to using this technique. Let's say that you had your sidebar content on this page, maybe some breadcrumb information, maybe some main content region. You aren't going to have that ability to basically say, take these elements and place them in this region. Everything on the page has to go in one region. Now, if you have a big enough region, you could place everything in there, and then when you get into the page, cut and paste things into other regions. but that's not really an ideal workflow either. So occasionally, if your page is really complex, it's probably going to be easier for you just to create a new page from the template and then copy and paste from an existing page. But for the page we have here, this workflow is going to work fine. I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and now our mission.htm is using the template for its page structure. You can see here's the content we have, who we are, and our image, and all of our paragraphs, and they fit in there just fine. So all we need to do at this point would be to place some trivia information in there and then determine what we want to do as far as our sub navigation menu, breadcrumbs, and region ID would be helpful. So I'm going to highlight that and type in mission. Now I'm going to go ahead and set our template properties as well. I'm going to go up to modify and choose template properties. Now for my body class, we don't have any breadcrumbs on this page. So instead of the body class being has crumbs, I'm going to change that to no crumbs. And I'm able to type in anything I want there. Breadcrumbs will remain invisible, as will all of my sub-navigation. So since their default is to be invisible, I'm not going to have to go change anything there. I do need to go down, however, to my mission link and make sure that Dreamweaver knows that that is the current link. So I'm going to replace the text base link with current. Again, being very careful not to modify mission or the space between the two of them. So I just want it to say mission space current. Now, when we previously modified template properties, and in modifying them this time, you may have noticed this little checkbox right here, allow nested templates to control this. Well, later on, we'll be creating a nested template based on our main template. And this gives you the option or the ability to go ahead and allow people to set these attributes in your nested templates as well. For what we're doing here, though, we don't need to do that. We'll just leave it as mission and current. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And you may have noticed that the headline and the body copy moved down. That's because this page doesn't have breadcrumbs, so the margin above the main content region was increased to compensate for that. I'm just going to go ahead and save this and preview this in my browser. There we go. There's our page. It's looking good. The only thing it lacks is our trivia information, which we could go ahead and put in at any time. Now, for complex pages or pages where you might have to move multiple regions around once the template has been applied to it, this might not be the best workflow. Often, copying and pasting content into a new page based off the template will actually be faster and less prone to error. Regardless, it's helpful to understand both workflows so that when the time comes, you can make an informed choice as to which method to use. Depending upon how complex your site's layout and structure is, one template might not be enough to build your entire site. Take our tours detail section, for example. It has a complex structure that will be used for every tour package. Now, even though it shares many of the same assets as the rest of the site, its structure is going to make creating pages from our existing template rather time-consuming to build. As you can see, we have all these individual tour package details that would take a long time to build individually by hand. So in those cases, you can create what's called a nested template. Nested templates allow you to create a more specific template based off of your global template. Updating your global template would still, in turn, update all of your nested templates, giving you that single file update control that makes templates so attractive in the first place. In this movie, we'll take our global template and create a nested template for our tour details section. So I actually have the tour detail backpack reference file, and this is the page that we're going to use as a reference for building our nested template. Now, the first step in building a nested template is the same as building any new page off of a template. You just go to File and choose New. We want to do New Page from Template. We're going to be using our main template that's in the Explore California site. And again, you want to double check and make sure Update Page When Template Changes is checked. It's really important for this workflow. I'm going to go ahead and hit Create, and there's our brand new page. And just like when we were creating new pages from our template, we'll do a little bit of copying and pasting. Before we do that, however, we can go ahead and set the basic structure of the page. Now remember, this is going to be a template designed only to build pages within the Tours section. So we can go ahead and hardwire a lot of that structure up front so that we don't have to build it every single time we build a new page within the Tours section. So Region ID is going to change to Tours, and it'll always be that for this particular template. I can also go up to Modify and modify my template properties and go ahead and set a few of these properties that are going to be specific to the Tours section. Body class will remain as has crumbs. Breadcrumb will be visible. I'm going to show that. Now, here's another thing. Notice that we have allow nested template to control this. That means if we wanted to, this nested template that we're about to build could control that template property as to whether it's visible or not. Well, all of the tours pages are going to need the breadcrumb and the tours sub-navigation displayed and the tours listed as current. So frankly, in this case, we don't need to allow nested templates to control this. But if you did have a property that was going to change from page to page within any subdirectory, you could go ahead and do that, and that would allow the nested template to control it. You can see it has a little value here that says pass through, and that would enable those pages to control that. I'm going to turn that off, however. I'm going to make sure breadcrumb is showing. Now I'm going to change the breadcrumb here. I'm going to go to all tours, and again, I'm going to make this link go to tours.htm. And since that's in an editable region, I will be able to add more breadcrumbs as I construct pages in my subdirectory. Now, page heading is going to change. I'm going to highlight that, and I'm going to call this tour name. And for body copy goes here, I'm going to type in tour description goes here. So even though the structure is the same, I like putting placeholder information there that is very specific towards that. And there is one more template property we need to change. Go up to modify template properties again. You can bring that back up anytime you want. I'm going to go down to my tours subnav and show that. And then I'm going to go to my tours link, and I'm going to change base link again to current to indicate that we are in that section. Again, verify that you're not modifying tours and that the space between the two of them is left. I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and that's a good place to start. Okay, so everything's looking pretty good so far. And now I'm just going to go ahead and save this as a template. So I'm going to go to File, and instead of just saving this as a normal page, I'm going to do Save as Template. And that is how we create nested templates. This is going to be a template that is based off of the main template. Now again, we get our message about our region ID. That's okay. And once again, we get our Save as Template dialog box. Now, as far as the name of the template, I'm going to call it tour_detail. And then for description, I'm going to type in tour detail with repeating region. And we're going to talk about repeating regions in just a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And now you can see that we're working on a brand new template. Now I'm going to switch over to the tour detail backpack reference because it has some structure that we need. If I scroll down below the sort of standard content, I can see that we have tour descriptions for the packages available for the backpack tour. This is a repeating structure. These tour descriptions all look the same, just their information changes. So I'm going to scroll back up, click inside the first one of these, and take a closer look at the structure. Each one of these is found inside of a div with the class tour description. Those are all encased in a div with the ID tour descriptions, plural. That is the element I want to select. So using the tag selector, click on the div pound tour descriptions. With that selected, go up to Edit and choose Copy. Now let's go back to our tour detail.dwt. Now we want that structure on the page, but we don't want it right beside the main content region. So what I'd like you to do is click inside the tour description and then use the tag selector to select the div pound main article. So that is the div that surrounds all of your tour name and the body copy for the tour. The tour descriptions themselves, that repeating region, needs to go underneath that. So what I'm going to do now is with that div tag selected, I'm going to hit my right arrow key. In the code, that's going to place me outside of that main article div tag, and that's really important. We do not want to paste this inside the main article div tag. We want it to be a separate structure. So again, just to do that one more time, click anywhere inside the main article, use the tag selector to select it, and then hit the right arrow key. Again, that's going to place you just outside of that main article div. Now I can go to Edit, choose Paste, and now that repeating structure is on the page. Now in this case, we really only need one of these. So I'm going to select each one of them by clicking inside of it and then clicking on the div.tourDescription singular and deleting it. So I'm just going to click inside every single one of these guys, except for one, and delete every single one of them. So again, div.tourDescription, not tour descriptions plural, the singulars, and get rid of those. Occasionally Dreamweaver might kind of space out on you for just a minute there like it did with me, so just be patient and that structure should come back. Okay, again, just to verify, click inside the Big Sur Retreat, which should be the last one left, and it should be inside of a div with the class of tour description, which should in turn be inside of a div with an ID of tour descriptions. So okay, we're in good shape there. Once again, go up, save the file. So our nested template is now almost ready to go. One thing that we can do to our tour detail template that's going to make it a little bit easier to use is add a repeating region to it. The tour package description structure that we see here includes an image, the name of the tour description, and some other elements. That structure simply repeats over and over for each tour. Repeating regions help deal with commonly repeating elements like this by allowing you to create as many repeating items as you need when you make a new page. Before we build any pages using our new tour detail template, we will first add a repeating region to our template, and we'll do that in the next movie. The most successful templates are the ones that take full advantage of page structure. It's very common to have several items on a page that are basically the same structure, just repeating over and over again. Product descriptions and thumbnails are good examples of this. Instead of having to continually build the same structure manually, you can just create repeating regions within your templates to speed up that process considerably. So here I have the tour_detail.dwt. Now if I scroll down, I can see the complex structure that we're going to need for each of the tour packages that are going to be displayed with the tours. In this case, we have a headline, we have the price and the number of days, we have a tour description, a map showing where the tour is, tour options and ratings, and a couple of links for people to click to learn more about the tour or to book the tour again. Now, some tour packages may have 4 tours, some may have 5, some may have 9. And so because of this, we don't really want to have to manually create this structure over and over and over again. So this tour package description is a perfect candidate for a repeating region. So the first step in creating a repeating region is to identify the structure that needs to repeat. And if I click anywhere inside the tour description, I can see that it is surrounded with a parent div tag. That div tag has the class tour description. So if you click inside any element, say that paragraph right in the middle, for example, you can click on that div tag and you'll notice that it selects the entire thing. Now, this is a really important tip in terms of structuring these repeating regions. You want to make sure they're encased in either a paragraph or a div tag or some type of a block level element that's going to make it easy to repeat these over and over and over again. If these were just loosely constructed with headlines and paragraphs and images, we could repeat them over and over again, but we'd have to be very careful as to how we select them. Using something like a div tag to encase them and then giving that div tag a class that helps not only with the styling but with the identification of the content is a really important organizational step into creating repeating regions. So with that div tag selected, we want to go up to Insert, Template Objects, Repeating Region. We're going to be prompted to name our region, and we're going to go ahead and name this repeating region Tour Detail. I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and our repeating region is added to the page. Now, a couple of changes have just happened to our template as well. Before we start scrolling around and deselecting anything, I want to deal with one of the most important changes right off the bat. You'll notice that I have the content inside the div tag still selected. This is really important. If you've clicked off of it, simply click back inside the paragraph and click on the div tag again to select all the contents inside this repeating region. Essentially, repeating regions by default are not editable. So you can repeat this content as often as you want in any page based off this template, but you wouldn't be able to change them. So the first thing we need to do here is to insert another editable region within the repeating region. The easiest way to do that is just leave it selected, because now we can go right up to Insert, Template Objects, Editable Region. Now in this case, I want to name this editable region Tour Specific. I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and you can see that now the Tour Specific editable region is sitting inside that Tour Detail region. Okay, perfect. Well, I mentioned that there was another big change to our template page as well, and if we scroll up, we can see that. The main content region now has a totally different highlight color. This highlight color indicates a nested region within our template. Nested regions are also locked by default. So if you create a repeating region, you can do a lot of damage to existing editable regions on the page. We still need to edit tour name and the body copy for the tour, so I'm going to go ahead and highlight both of those lines of copy. And with both of them highlighted, I'm going to go up to Insert, Template Objects, Editable Region, and we're going to go ahead and type in Tour Description for this region. So editable regions can really help your templates become a lot more flexible and help you build complex structures quickly. However, you should be aware of the fact that some content that used to be editable might not be anymore. So you want to double check your page, make sure you still have editable regions where you need, and if you don't, just go ahead and insert them again. So go ahead and save this, and now we're ready to go ahead and build templates off of this page. Now, if you're working along with me and you're in the 1308 folder, you're going to get this message, Update Template Files. Well, we have a finished files that's part of this chapter. And in the finished files, we already have the page that we're about to build next. Now, we don't want to update that page, so just say don't update. We're going to talk later on in our next movie about updating templates. So for right now, we're just going to skip that step. We can now close this template, and we want to build a brand new page based off of it. So go to File, choose New. Now when we go into Explore California site, we see our two templates there. We have our main template and our tour detail. Notice how easy it is to choose between the two of those visually. Main template has a very basic structure, while tour detail provides us considerable more starting structure to that page. So we want to choose tour detail, update page when template changes, and go ahead and create. Now I'm going to go ahead and save this page. That's typically the first thing I do when I create a new page based off of a template. That way, any links that I create or any images I place on the page will be able to be resolved pretty simply. I'm going to go in the 1308 directory, find the tours subdirectory, and open that up. We're going to call this page tour_detail_backpack.htm. I'm going to go ahead and click Save to save the file. Now I'm going to go up to my breadcrumbs, and I need to add a breadcrumb here. So I'm going to click right after all tours, hit space, and I need to add another character to this. Now, sometimes special characters can be hard to remember exactly what their encoding is. And so because of this, Dreamweaver gives us, up here in our Insert panel, a text tab. In the text tab, we have a lot of special characters that we can add simply by grabbing the pull-down menu. Or if you don't see the one you're looking for here, you can go to Other Characters. So here we need this double right angle bracket character, the one that looks like two arrows going to the right. I'm going to click that. And I see that I get the special character encoding for that there. I click OK, and it adds it for me. Lovely. And then right after that, I'm going to go ahead and type in Backpack Cal. Now, just to save us a little bit of time, I'm going to go over to the Tours folder, and I'm going to open up this Tour Detail Backpack Reference file. I'm going to open that up. And then here, I'm just going to copy this body copy. Want a chance to get away from it all. And I'm just going to scroll down and get all that body copy. Copy that and paste it right there. So copying and pasting, nothing wrong with that. And of course, we're going to change tour name to Backpack Cal. Now we need to go ahead and add our repeating regions. So I'm going to scroll down towards the bottom of the page, and I can see where we have our repeating regions down here. Now, the Backpack Cal tour has 5 packages. We have 1 on the page already. So I'm just going to hit this plus symbol once, and yep, you have to scroll back down twice, 3 times, and finally 4 times. It's unfortunate that it just doesn't stay right there, but you do move back up the page, so you do have to scroll back down. It's a little bit of a pain, but it's certainly better than making those by hand. Now, what about the content for these guys? Because right now, they're all exactly the same. Well, we've got another file that can help us with that. I'm going to go over to my Files panel, open the Assets folder, and I'm going to open big_sur.txt, and here we have all of our tours. Now, a lot of times your CSS, as helpful as it can kind of get in the way. Notice, for example, that if I try to highlight this 3 days, 750, it's really hard to highlight, and that's because of what we're doing with the CSS there. So what I'm going to do is go up to my document toolbar, right-click, and choose Style Rendering. It's going to bring up my Style Rendering toolbar. Now, on the Mac, it's going to dock here with the document toolbar. On the PC, it's going to be wherever you had it last. I'm going to go ahead and turn off all style rendering, which is this little icon right here that looks like some stairs. And we're just going to get our default rendering, which means it's going to be really easy to select all of these different pieces. Okay, well, it's really crucial to go ahead and keep these organized. Big Sur Retreat's not going to change. So I'm going to scroll down to the second one and then flip back over to my text file. Now, my text file, I'm going to scroll down, find my retreats, and the second one is Channel Islands Excursion. So I'm just going to start copying and pasting. So I'm going to copy the title and then paste that. Go back to the text, copy the days and the price, paste that, copy the body copy, paste that. Now be sure not to replace the image. And be sure not to replace the options down here until it's time. And then the rating, I'm going to copy that and paste it right there, replacing the optional and everything else. That tour detail, I don't need that open anymore, so I'm going to close that so that I can switch back and forth between these guys. Okay, so again, a little bit more manual labor, but certainly better than having to build this structure ourselves every single time. I'm going to copy and paste each headline. Now, you want to be really careful when you're selecting these. Occasionally, you're going to paste it, and you're going to lose your heading. It's just the way that this is formatted, so you want to be really careful about that. If that happens, just undo it, carefully select the text, and do it again. So you always want to go a little slow at first and make sure you're getting this just right and that you don't have too much selected. So I'm going to copy that and paste it. And there's our third one done. We've got 2 more to do. At least I didn't pick a tour that had 9 trips, right? Select that, copy it, paste it, copy that, and paste it. I'm also fond of saying that this type of work is why it's always good to have interns. So if you're in a situation where you can have interns in your office, this is fantastic experience for interns, and it's good for you to have them as well. So there's our last one. We'll paste that. Oops, see, that happened to me. So you have to be really careful. If that happens, no big deal. Just undo it, paste it again, and you'll be good. You just want to make sure you're not replacing the tag as well. And with the headline, it's sometimes easy to do that. There's my last body copy. We'll paste that in. And finally, we'll replace the difficulty. Now, as soon as I've got all this text placed in here, there's no reason for my styles to still be turned off. So I'm going to go back to my style rendering toolbar, toggle my styles back on, and I'm going to close this. Now, we are almost done, but you'll notice that all of the maps are still pointing to Big Sur. So what I'm going to do now is go down to each one of these maps, go to my Files panel, and open my images. If I scroll down through my images, I can see that I have a whole section of maps here. So I'm going to select the channel map, for example, and using the point to file icon down here in the Properties Inspector, I can just grab that and point to, say, the map of the Channel Isles. That's a very quick and easy way to change your images when you need to swap them out. I'll do the same thing here. I'll highlight my image, and for the Death Valley one, I'll just point to map_valley. For the John Muir one, I'll go ahead and point to the map of Yosemite. And finally, for Mount Whitney, I'll go ahead and point to map of Whitney. Now, we also need to go ahead and change the Book Now link, so the Learn More links to be contextually sensitive to the tour we're doing. But I think you guys have the idea of going in, using the repeating region, and then adjusting the structure within each one of those elements to be what you need it to be. Go ahead and save the file. And there we go. We've used our nested template to build a page. And then the structure it provided us really saved us a lot of time compared to trying to build that all manually. We were also able to take advantage of our repeating regions to quickly display the tour packages for this specific tour. Taking full advantage of Dreamweaver templates by using such features as nested templates, repeating regions, and optional regions, well, all those require a lot of planning before you start constructing your templates. But as you can see, it's really worth the effort. Although using templates when building your site certainly speeds up development time, I feel that the most powerful feature of templates is the ease with which they allow you to make site-wide or area-specific updates. When a template is modified and saved, Dreamweaver prompts you as to whether you would like to update files based off of that template. You can either update your file then or at any time by going to the Modify menu. So here we have our main_template.dwt open, and I want to scroll down. And maybe we've gotten some information about the client that they want to start adding sort of a social media aspect to their site. So I'm going to place my cursor right after the phone number here and hit return to create a new paragraph. Now, because the last paragraph that we were in had a class applied to it, this one does too. So before I begin typing, I'm going to go down to my Properties Inspector, and I can see if I'm looking at the HTML properties that it says class phone. Go all the way at the top, and I'm going to change it to none. That way, our text is going to be sort of the default size. I'm then going to add the text, come hang with us, and then a colon. And here, I'm going to add an icon for Twitter. So I'm going to go over to my images folder, and I'm going to scroll down until I find right there is my Twitter.png. And I'm just going to drag and drop that right after the us. I'm going to alt text this as follow us on Twitter. And there is my Twitter icon. Now, of course, I could make a link out of that and link it to our Twitter feed if we had one. So right now, we'll just leave this one as a placeholder. So I'm going to go up here and go to File and choose Save. And because I've modified my template, Dreamweaver is going to ask me, as soon as this gets done telling me what it always tells me about this particular template, it's going to ask me if I want to update pages based off this template. And you can see we have quite a few pages based off this. Now, at this point, I can choose to update or don't update. Now, the don't update option sounds kind of weird, but we're going to talk about that one in just a moment. For right now, choose update, and then we get a log that tells us exactly what's happened. You can either show the log or hide the log, but if you show it, it'll tell you what's going to happen. It'll tell you how many files were examined, how many were updated, and then it'll also alert you if you had one or two that couldn't have been updated for whatever reason. I'm just going to go ahead and close, and I want to open up one of those pages to see the change in action. So I'm going to go down to mission.htm, open that up, and indeed, I can see the change. Okay, well, as we just saw, we had the option of not updating the page as well. So what's all that about? Well, I'm going to go back to my template. There are a couple of reasons that might drive not updating. Let me show you. I'm going to go ahead and select that Twitter icon and hit my right arrow and then space to give myself a little bit of space there. Then I'm going to go over to my images directory and I'm going to find the Facebook icon, so facebook.png. I'm just going to drag it to that location. Be really careful about where you place that. And for alt text, I'm going to say, be our friend. You want to try to not sound too needy. And we'll click OK. And there's our Facebook icon. And of course, we could also link that to our Facebook account if we had one. So I'm going to save this. And now when this option comes up, instead of saying update, I'm going to say don't update. All right, so why would you ever do that? Well, let's say you're working on a very large template that has been attached to, say, dozens of pages or even hundreds of pages if your site's big enough. Maybe you're making incremental changes and you want to wait until the very, very end of your process to update all of your pages. Updating pages can take a while. Once you get into having, double digits or even triple digits of pages, it can take Dreamweaver a while. And if every time you save, you have to hit update, it's going to slow down that process. So you could just keep working on your template until you're ready to update. You might also make a change to a template that might not need to be pushed out to the pages until a couple of days or maybe another week's gone by. Maybe you go in your template and you change the monthly special, but you don't really need to update the site until the following Monday. So you could make the change and then wait and push the change out at a later date. So how do you update a page after the fact? Well, I'm going to go back to my mission page, and this works whether I have the template open or not. You'll notice in the mission page, I no longer see the Facebook icon. So I could go up to Modify, Templates, and there I have Update Current Page. I also have the option to update pages if I wanted to do an entire site-wide update. So I'm just going to say Update Current Page, and notice now, there's my Facebook icon. Again, if I had gone to Modify Templates, Update Pages, I have the option of updating the entire site or just the files that use a specific template. That way you have a little bit more control over which pages are being updated. If I hit Start, I can see the log again, and I've updated 8 files. So I'm going to go ahead and close that and save the file. So taking advantage of templates in Dreamweaver can dramatically speed up both development and, as we've seen here, site maintenance. Now, obviously, the success of your templates will be directly related to how well they are planned and structured at the very beginning of your development process. Based on that, I recommend taking extra time as you plan your templates to map out a site structure and a workflow that allows your templates to be both powerful and flexible as you're building and updating the pages within your site.